And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another edition of Banner Morning, recorded on Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. I'm Jared Morris, and we are now just 25 days away from Hoosier hysteria. In statistical analysis, let's continue our journey through the individual statistics for returnees that most need to improve for this year's Indiana team to reach its potential. We've already covered Juwan Morgan's free throw shooting, Devontae Green's assist-turnover ratio, Justin Smith's efficiency around the basket, and Al Durham's three-point shooting. Today, we're going to discuss Zach McRoberts, who, despite being a walk-on amidst the influx of talent Archie Miller has brought in, still figures to open the season as a starter. Hey, there is something to be said for earning the trust of your coach and being the most consistent defender on the roster. But for Zach, the key is becoming a contributor on more than just one end of the floor. As much as Zach's presence helps Indiana's defense because of his versatility on the perimeter and the tone he sets, his presence on the court also hampers the offense. He essentially forces Indiana to play 4.5 on 5 because outside of the occasional hustle, rebound, or three-pointer, he's basically a non-factor on that end of the floor. In fact, he's often a negative on offense. Zach's 39.4% shooting from three-point range on 33 attempts last season barely compensated for the fact that his turnover rate was more than double his assist rate last season. That has to change. A player like Zach can provide an inspiring storyline during mediocre seasons like what Indiana has experienced over the last 2 years. But at a certain point, as Indiana looks to move up the pecking order of teams in the Big Ten and nationally, such a one-dimensional presence on the court will prove detrimental. So what does Zach need to do this season? Simply put, he needs to shoot more. When he's open, he needs to let it fly. He can't play hot potato with the ball like we've seen too often over the past 2 seasons, passing up open looks without even glancing at the basket. Last year, Zach took 7.3% of Indiana shots while he was on the floor. The previous year, he took just 5.3% of Indiana shots while on the floor. No wonder teams barely paid him any attention. Now, I'm not saying he needs to be James Blackman Jr. and hunt shots, but Zach needs to show more confidence in his shooting as a senior and be closer to where he was as a freshman at Vermont. That year, he took 12.9% of his team's shots while he was on the floor, and he was fairly successful. He made 52.2% of his two-point attempts and 35.3% of his three-point attempts. That isn't great, but it'll work fine. It's a credible threat that defenses must respect. If Zach can do that this year, he'll pour in a few more points, and more importantly, he'll help to space the floor for Romeo, Juwan, and the rest of Indiana's offensive creators so they can go to work. Combine that with the productivity that we know he'll bring on the defensive end, and Zach will remain a valuable part of the rotation even as Indiana gets better and becomes a team to reckon with in March once again. Thank you for listening to this edition of Banner Morning presented by the Assembly Call. Join us every Thursday night for our live broadcast of Assembly Call Radio and immediately following every IU game once the season begins. To watch live or catch a replay, visit assemblycall.com. And remember to use the URL iutickets.shop this season when you need IU basketball or IU football tickets. That's iutickets.shop. I'll be back tomorrow with a brand new edition of Banner Morning. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.